YouTube. Andrew Miller, Shane Black, Tarik LaCour from Hook'emHeadlines.com and the Hook'em Horn Show. We are coming back at you all today with our preview breakdown of the suddenly very interesting game this weekend between the BYU Cougars and the number 7 Texas Longhorns at DKR. Any number of storylines to go over for Texas this week, but the big conversation is surrounding Maalik Murphy and the quarterback situation. I think Texas is really going to get put to the test here. You know, Shane, I mentioned this in our Monday overreact, or well, I guess we did on Sunday overreaction show that, you know, the coaches are going to have to earn their paychecks right now, but, you know, that this quarterback depth, you know, us saying that Texas has the most talented quarterback room in the country. Now's the time where that has to be shown. You know, Texas comes up with a big win last weekend over Houston, big in the sense that I feel like a couple of years ago, Texas probably doesn't win that game, but you know, they found a way to tough it out, got a pretty fortunate break on that fourth down spot. And then Houston couldn't convert the following play. Texas wins 31-24. You get a really clutch late touchdown from CJ Baxter Jr. on Maalik Murphy's second drive of the game. And, you know, defense comes up big when it has to. Donovan Smith makes a mistake, I think, trying to target Jahdae Barron late, and the rest is history. You know what, Tarik, I'll pass it over to you because, you know, Shane and I did the overreaction show a couple of days ago. We haven't had you on in a couple of weeks, week and a half or so. So what were your thoughts coming out of the game?
Well, I loved that ending of saying the guy dropped the ball and then it flashing right to Dana Holgorsen saying the F word. It was great. I also it cheered up even more by Dana Holgorsen saying in his presser that if they had scored, he would have gone for 2 with the horns down play, whatever that is. We didn't get to find out, but you know, now that we'll probably play a role in his dismissal, that's all good. Yeah, this BYU game is going to be interesting now with either Maalik Murphy or Arch Manning making their first start in DKR, and it's really just it's too bad. You know, Quinn Ewers has been having a really good season, and it's tough to see him get hurt, but show moves on. Luckily, whoever the starter is, they will have the benefit of having CJ Baxter healthy and Jonathan Brooks healthy, playing well, and all the receivers are healthy, and looks like JT Sanders is getting healthy, and Ryan Watts is getting healthy, so you'll have a more complete team and home field advantage to beat a not as good as their record 5-2 team. How's that? So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I do expect Texas to win. I do expect it to be closer than I would like. This has a feeling like this could be like the Wyoming game, where the offense might not be moving as much as you might think it should, but at least this time you'll have the out of saying, but you have a quarterback making his first start, knowing that his victory or loss is really going to shape the projection of whether Texas goes into November as a true contender for the Big 12 title, or if they're playing keep up.
I think that if Texas can win this game decisively and you get your quarterback in a rhythm, that completely shifts the narrative for this kind of tough schedule that Texas has in November. I wouldn't hesitate to say that Texas has one of like the 2 or 3 most difficult schedules in the Big 12 in November. You got some tough games on the road. You know, we'll see what TCU. I have a hard time getting a read on TCU right now, but Kansas State has kind of figured it out, and they look good with their 2 quarterback system somehow working as well as it has with Will Howard and Avery Johnson. Iowa State seems to be turning it around with Rocco Beck quarterback. Let me start here for the BYU game this week. I think that usually the approach we take on here is talking about why Texas can dominate their opponent. I'm going to kind of shift that conversation a little bit this week and just talk about why Texas can beat BYU. And I also want to talk a little bit more about Maalik Murphy. You know, by the time this video is posted, I'll have another video up on the channel where I kind of revisit the breakdown I did of Maalik Murphy's game when he initially committed to Texas a couple of years ago. Revisited some old reports, camp notes, things like that, and did about a 20-minute breakdown. for him. Went through the pros and cons of Arch Manning and Maalik Murphy as, possible starting quarterbacks while Quinn's out. Before we get into talking about the BYU game, I do want to pass it over to y'all really quick. Realistic expectations that y'all would have for Maalik Murphy as the starting quarterback this weekend. What would you expect to see from him? What do you think he can, what do you think he can do?
So I think we've heard a lot of talk throughout the week. I think someone over at IT mentioned it, that every Friday Sark would go meet, Sark and Milwee would meet with the quarterbacks and ask them, what are their favorite calls? What do they like? Not just Ewers, but Murphy and Manning as well. So I think hopefully there's some sort of Rolodex that Sark has, that he knows what Murphy's comfortable with. And like you mentioned at the top, Andrew, I think it's important the coaches are going to earn their paycheck this weekend and, in the subsequent weeks as well. But I think Sark setting Murphy up for success is going to be important. In that sense, I would expect him to have a pretty high completion percentage. I think you're going to see a lot of behind the line of scrimmage type passes, get Worthy, get Mitchell, get Sanders, get your running backs in space. And I think you're going to take a couple shots over the top per quarter. But in general, I think avoid the interceptions, because this is a game against a BYU team that, they're hard-nosed, they're gritty. It's always a tough spot, but the talent disparity is wide. So if Texas doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, they should be able to handle business here. The game could get dicey if Murphy or whomever is quarterback starts turning over the ball. So I think ball security is number one. Getting them in a rhythm early is number two. I mentioned this on the Houston recap, but any backup quarterback coming into the middle of a game is a tough situation. For Murphy, I think it's magnified just because he throws such a hard ball, and you pair that with the adrenaline of coming in off the sidelines, and his two passes, he absolutely ripped both of them. So I think getting him comfortable early. It seems like the team has a lot of confidence in him, so I think that should go a long way. But I think avoiding the turnover and keep the completion percentage up, make the easy throw, and then if you make the easy throw and you're running the football well, that'll create some space over the top. So
yeah, Tarik, what about?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with what Shane said there. One thing that does worry me is that the interior of the offensive line during pass protection has still not been as good as I'd like it to be. And Murphy doesn't have the quick feet that Quinn Ewers does. So he's going to need to get the ball out very quickly and making sure he's going down to his check down, which luckily Jonathan Brooks has been great at that, catching everything. So that's something. I hope that if we are going to take some deep shots, I hope to see Jonte Cook on the field more, as well as Xavier Worthy. Looks like Cook and Murphy have a good connection. So get the people on the field the guy's comfortable with. But that's kind of what I think of that. I think Texas should aim to run the ball 40 to 45 times.
Yeah, I think the Jonte Cook point is solid. I was going to pose that question to y'all, but if they've been working in practice the whole year, you want to get him out on the field more. We saw the connection in the spring game, and they obviously, I think, I would only guess, I'm not watching practices, but if you asked Maalik Murphy, who's caught most of his balls when he's been quarterbacking the offense in practice, Jonte Cook's probably the answer. So I think, I agree with you, Tarik. Seeing a good dosage of him on Saturday would be awesome for all parties.
Yeah, I mean, Sark said after the OU game that he regretted not getting Jonte Cook out on the field more. And I know that, he didn't really play Jonte much. I don't even know if Jonte took that many snaps outside of special teams in the Houston game, but I don't think he did. But, I mean, you obviously had that big connection on the deep ball, 70-plus yard touchdown between Maalik Murphy and Jonte Cook in the spring game. And I mean, I think that could be an interesting way, especially if you're going to end up spreading the field out a couple of times, maybe getting four wide in the game, and get some familiar targets out there for Maalik Murphy to throw to. And for me, this is the one thing that caught my eye today. I do think that one of the things that Texas is going to do is have a lot of first read passes for Maalik Murphy in the first half against BYU. in researching BYU and how much they're able to generate turnovers. I'll mention this a little bit later, but I think for Maalik, you got to put him in some pretty safe situations so he doesn't get rattled early. BYU has some guys that can get after the quarterback, mainly Tyler Batty, one of the better pass rushers among defensive ends in the Big 12. He leads BYU in sacks, and it's not really close. It's like almost 24 quarterback pressures this season. So, yeah. And you know what? I want to pose this question to y'all. I posted this article on the site, and then we can get into BYU and our score predictions. I did an article today on 4 freshmen that could start for UT in, well, I guess late October, November, but essentially the last 5 games of the season. For any combination of injuries, performance issues, whatever it be, expanding roles. I cited 4 guys: Anthony Hill at linebacker, Derek Williams, safety, Malik Muhammad, either cornerback spot, and then obviously Maalik Murphy at quarterback. You could also put Arch Manning there, I guess, but I think Malik is the likely starter this weekend. I think the one for me, I've been harping on Derek Williams a lot this week. I did an article on him yesterday talking about he's the impact safety Texas needs right now. I think he's the best safety Texas has at the moment. I think Michael Taft's been okay to pretty good. Jaron Thompson has been an issue. Keaton Crawford is pretty one-dimensional as a safety in terms of his strengths. But what do y'all think about that? If you had to pick 1 or 2 guys that are freshmen you think could start. None of those guys have made a start yet this season, by the way.
The freshman that I first put out there is the Raptor, Derek Williams. He's done well whenever he's been out there. I think if Worthy went down, Cook could start, but obviously we have 3 pretty good wide receivers right now. And well, we already kind of have a freshman starter in Cedric Baxter, so obviously him. Baxter, man, when he's healthy, he's different. I was watching him run and being like, I was like, oh, you saw it, and you're like, you see, that's why he was the starter game 1, because, Brooks is really good, but Brooks can't move like that and be that big and that hard to bring down. It's just like, yeah. I was like, you get ahead to Steve, like, very few safeties are going to be like, yeah, I'm going to hit that guy.
That type of quickness in a phone booth is special. It's kind of something that Bijan had. And, like you said, Brooks got that dangerous first step, is, I think, very good as in the running game and the passing game. But Baxter, that run against Houston, it was clutch, it was timely, and just that ability to work through chaos in multiple levels of the defense is special.
Yep.
Yeah, I think in regard to the freshmen, I think my 2 would be on the defensive side of the ball. You both touched on him, but Derek Williams is an obvious candidate to start, and he's been getting starting level snaps the past couple of games, and he's played well. And it's funny that even given Quinn Ewers going down, the biggest question on this team still might be the safety position, which is crazy to think about, but that's just kind of how bad they've been. And the Jalen Catalon injury doesn't help at all. But
I don't think it's a question, really. It's more of a
blatant concern.
No, it's more of there's an idea of what there's what you want and what you have are 2 different things.
Yeah.
So Texas wants to rotate a lot, and they shouldn't be. They should run the safety rotation very much the way they run the wide receiver rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Namely, you put your best guys out there. They play 90% of the snaps. Keaton Crawford, great athlete. He's a special teamer. He's not a safety. I'm not even sure that's really his best position. I think he's probably a better corner myself, but that's another discussion. And you certainly shouldn't be putting Crawford and Taft together. Mm-hmm. That's just a recipe for disaster. So,
and what happens with the safety rotations is, sure, you might have Williams and Thompson on the field, or whomever you think the best duo currently is. Okay, the offense is just going to wait until the next series for Taft and Crawford to be paired back there. So I completely agree. I don't understand that substitution pattern, but I also think Anthony Hill is a candidate. The linebacker health has obviously been solid, but part of the issue with the safeties has to be put on the linebackers the past couple of weeks, getting pushed up to put that. I mean, we saw it against Houston that Texas did not want to let Donovan Smith run the football, and I get that. But when you have it seemed like you had Benda and Jalen Ford like playing in the box on passing downs. It was a little weird there. We saw Hill was super effective against Jalen Milroe. I think just having his athletic ability gives him more versatility in the defense. And, even if he drops 5 yards, he's still there as kind of a spy. So I think kind of closing that gap between the safeties and the linebackers is huge, while also, not giving up those quarterback runs. And I think Anthony Hill is the most adept at doing that. Luckily, this week it probably won't matter against Keaton Slovis. But, going forward, looking to Kansas State, that'll be a big issue.
Push back on what you were saying a little bit, Shane, from the perspective of I think I completely agree that Anthony Hill is a great weapon against dual threat quarterbacks. I think his ability to contest base and to just blow up the ball carrier played a big role in Houston, again, not being able to run the football. But
he'll be key versus Kansas State.
For sure. My problem with Hill is not a problem really, but where my pushback is coming from is he once or twice a game, he's not passing off his guy in coverage correctly, or he's not receiving the guy correctly. He seems to get lost in coverage, following his guy for a little bit too long. It's a freshman issue. We knew that coverage was going to be one of his big areas of improvement, and I think he is getting better week over week in that regard, but he's still got a ways to go. I think we're mostly on the same page there with freshmen that could start down the stretch. And I mean, it's been a pleasant surprise to see a lot of these guys step up, especially on defense. That big trio of Hill, Muhammad, and Williams have played significant snaps. Muhammad's second most snaps of any cornerback. And Williams was our highest graded safety against Houston. So
yeah, and just one final point on that. I don't want to say the few times the defense has made plays the past couple of weeks, but when one of those younger guys makes a play and the other freshman is right there hyping him up, and they're all on the field at the same time, that gets the juices flowing. That makes you feel good, because those are three guys who, they might have some deficiencies, but they're going to be absolute ballers next year and as juniors as well. And so that's a very good sign that you have almost three sort of cornerstones of your defense that you'll be able to rely on for the next couple of years.
Very true. Yeah. I mean, these guys are going to be huge when we go into the SEC next year. Let's start the conversation now to the BYU game. I've got some optimism for this game, just because, again, I don't think BYU's offense is very good right now. I don't really know another way to put that. They just haven't been producing through the air or on the ground in the last few weeks. I guess they had 150 rushing yards against Tech, average 5 yards a carry, but everyone's running it against Tech right now, it seems. They haven't averaged over 5 yards per play or even touched that in the last 2 weeks. And they haven't totaled 300 yards since their conference opener against Kansas. 300 yards of total offense, I mean. They're relying on their defense, generating turnovers, but their defense has been prone to giving up a lot of yards too at times this season. 500 yards against Cincinnati. 600 yards almost against TCU.
That's possible.
I don't either. Cincinnati, Emory Jones is a capable dual threat quarterback. I think Corey Kiner's a decent running back. Xavier Henderson is a good wide receiver, but that's about it. They don't have all that many weapons on offense. They're mainly built around their defensive front, and they haven't been very good. But BYU's had trouble separating from anyone, and I think they got exposed for a lot of what they are against TCU. That when you got multiple guys that you can get the ball to, especially out of the slot, work the seams, get these guys in space against some of BYU's slower defenders, you can do a lot of damage. I've mentioned it already. I think one of the reasons why Texas can defeat BYU and control this game this weekend is BYU's lackluster offense. BYU last week, 127 passing yards, 15 of 27 against a Tech defensive backfield that is okay, but isn't great. And then the week before, 44% passing, 152 yards, and no touchdowns against a TCU team that's been very up and down this year, that just allowed over 40 points to Kansas State. I'll say this. I think that if we got serious problems on defense, even with the injuries we've suffered, if we can't hold BYU under 300 yards this weekend. Is that fair?
Agreed. They can't run the football at all. And Texas, even during
They can't
Texas,
pass it at all either. But okay.
yeah. But even I think as a team this season, BYU's averaging 2.8 yards per carry. And even during Texas's defensive struggles, they still really haven't been giving up much on the ground. I mean, last week at Houston couldn't run the ball at all. Oklahoma really couldn't run it besides Gabriel. So I think right there, you're going to make them one-dimensional. And like Tarik mentioned, Keaton Slovis has had a good game against Kansas, but other than that, has been shaky. So I think it's going to start up front, and hopefully that energy up front leads to, more energy and confidence in the back.
Yeah, if Ryan Watts comes back, I wanted to see some more in-your-face type pressure rather than playing 5-10 yards off the ball.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, BYU just doesn't have the athletes in the receiving core to get a lot of separation. They will try to attack you over the top, but that's just because Chase Roberts is a bigger receiver, and they try to get him the ball in some contested situations, or just rely on his ability to fight through contact after the catch. I will say this: Keaton Slovis does have like the third most passing yards on deep ball passing attempts of any Big 12 quarterback this season. But when you narrow that down to just Big 12 play, he's kind of lower tier in the Big 12. So I think that even though BYU has hit some deep balls this season, I think most of what they're going to try to do this weekend is try to hit us in the short and intermediate passing game. A lot of crossers like Houston did last weekend. And I mean, we have to adjust. We have to play the crossing patterns better than we did last weekend. But at the same time, I think BYU their skill guys are nowhere close to the level of what Houston has. And that's what pretty much everyone pointed out last week, was that top three of Matthew Golden, Joseph Banjak, and Sam Brown, and even Stephon Johnson Jr. Those four are very, very good wide receivers. Matthew Golden, I think, is one of the most talented receivers in the Big 12. And so I think, Texas this weekend, if you get some cornerbacks back in the mix, Tarik, you mentioned it, should get Ryan Watts back this weekend. I think Jahdae Barron should play. And we'll see what Gavin Holmes and Terrence
Bilbo played well when he was out there.
But one bad read where he got burned on a deep ball, but I think yeah. I mean, it
happens.
It does, especially with some of the kind of some of the bumps he's had on his ride to getting back on the field this year, because he unfortunately suffered a lot of injury concerns last year or so. And so I would like to see a little bit more of Gilbo. I mean, he played well in the first half of last season as a true freshman. I think he could be a quality piece when we're dealing with some injuries in the secondary down the stretch. And so, where I would put the over-under this week for BYU at passing yards I think I saw it today on Caesar Sportsbook. It's at 165.5. I'd probably put it at 150. Where would you all fall on that?
I just think it should be higher because they're not going to be able to run the football.
Okay.
So they're going to have to.
I just think when you have a starting quarterback out, all bets are off on these types of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Sorry, go ahead.
I think the game script for this one is impossible to predict. Ideally, yep. Texas comes out and gets Murphy a lot of easy completions, runs it all over BYU, forces a lot of quick 3-and-outs, and they're up a couple scores early, and then just salts it with the run game. You could also have Texas turn it over a little bit and keep BYU in it, and then you never know what can happen. So there are a multitude of different ways this game ends up, which is it's a little stressful as someone who supports the team, but yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. My next point of why I think Texas can defeat BYU, y'all talked about it already. I think it's going to be a key part of Sark's game plan is the ground game, getting the zone ground game going early and often in this weekend. And, you got Baxter, who seems to be ready to shoot out of a cannon and finally I'm waiting for that first 100 rushing yard game. I think it could happen at any moment for him. And, Brooks is obviously having a sensational season. BYU, they play a multiple 4-3 defensive front. I think you're going to see them. They like to load the box. I ran the numbers earlier this week. They load the box, or at least stack it with 7+ defenders more times than any other Big 12 team has this season. I think it's clear that they are going to try to force us to throw the ball around and beat them through the air. I don't know how well that's going to work even against us. I also ran the numbers today. BYU against zone rushing attempts this year. They are kind of middle of the pack in the Big 12, averaging around 4.2 yards per carry, about 90 yards per game. They also have the second lowest stuff rate against zone rushing attempts of any Big 12 defense. So they're not having a whole lot of success getting just full-on defensive stops. I think Jonathan Brooks, a guy, I wrote this today, he leads the Big 12 in rushing yards per game against stacked boxes, defenders with seven or more players. I'm excited to see what Texas can do this weekend, running the ball to be able to get Maalik Murphy set up for some easier passes. I think that's a good way for Texas to set the tone. Maybe get a couple of touchdowns early in this one, get Murphy comfortable, go from there.
Nope, that's my plan too. So I think Jonathan Brooks is at 825 right now. So it'd be nice if he could crack 1,000 this week.
Have another game like he did against Kansas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A thought that I'm having here is, you have the BYU game, the Kansas State game, and the Tech game. So there's a real chance that Texas could go undefeated at home this year.
True. Yeah. I mean, I'll say this too. I think there's some credence to, yes, BYU, their linebacker play, they're at least sure tacklers. They got a lot of experienced guys back there.
Kurt Warner went to BYU, didn't he? Not Fred Warner.
Fred Warner, the Niners linebacker.
Yeah. Not Kurt Warner. Sorry.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. We said linebacker and sure tackling. I thought of Fred Warner from last night.
Yeah.
Where was seen that before?
Yeah. But I just think BYU, their interior defensive line, I think it's below average in the Big 12, and Texas has showed, but we were still able to wear Houston down. And I think we can do the same to BYU this weekend.
Last point before I let Shane go, the same was true of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They were looking tired. That's when Bowen went down. I was like, come on, you know what they're doing. They're like, guys, we're tired. We can't do this anymore. They're too big. They're hitting us too much. When we get into the fourth quarter, I mean, Texas has a really physical offensive line, and that's going to wear well next season when we go to the SEC.
I agree.
Yeah. I don't have a ton to add. I think that you guys mostly nailed it. If we do run the ball 40, 45 times like Tarik is talking about, that'll definitely, rear its head in the fourth quarter. Even if in the first quarter, you're getting stuffed a lot because they have those 7-man boxes. I also think that with those boxes, one or two cuts and Jonathan Brooks is gone. Like that is a 75-yard touchdown waiting to happen. So if they continue to stack the box, I think you're going to see, a little bit of creativity in the run game, and hopefully Brooks can bounce one. But yeah, not a ton to add on that.
They will man up on us, I think, a little bit this weekend. You're not going to have a situation like last weekend where BYU tries to go with the 3 high safety look and then, kind of throws our offense into a spiral like it did last. Yeah. I just don't think that's going to happen. BYU seems to stick to their defensive game plan regardless of how the game's going for them. Jay Hill seems to be pretty firm on that. And then I'll mention this quickly. My last point, Shane, you were kind of hitting at it a moment ago, but I just think we have too many weapons to get out in space. I don't think BYU, especially if they are loading the box and, playing one-on-one coverage with us on the outside, I think that you can look at this kind of like the Wyoming game in a sense. I think Tarik, like you said earlier, where, Xavier Worthy can break one for an explosive play. Maybe Jonathan Brooks, Jatavian Sanders, I think, can kind of pick them apart down the seams. I think you're going to see a lot more to JT this week.
Yeah, and I think Tarik might have mentioned this a little bit earlier. If Texas, this is a game. This is a huge measuring stick. If Texas comes out and struggles, and this is a one possession game to the end, I don't know how you're going to go unscathed without Ewers, because this could arguably be the easiest game that you'll have without Quinn. So if it's a tough one, even though it's going to be Murphy's first start, I don't think that bodes well for the run of Kansas State and then at TCU and at Iowa State. If you can come out and win this game pretty convincingly and grow confidence with the quarterback and in the secondary, then I think you translate that to Kansas State, which might be a pseudo Big 12 title elimination game. So I think there's a lot on the table this week.
Yeah, that's fair. Sorry, Diamondbacks are down to one more out, and they're in the World Series. Fingers crossed. But anyway,
who are the backs playing? I forget.
Diamondbacks, Phillies.
Oh.
But this is a game where if you're Texas and you expect to make the Big 12 title game, this is a game you have to win. Shane, like you, and kind of like you guys have both said, regardless of the quarterback. I mean, I think last year, if you had
to play Savion Red the entire game, you should win this game.
Yeah, I mean, we won a game with Rashawn Johnson playing quarterback for us against a bowl-eligible Kansas State team 2 years ago. And this team is much better with the supporting cast. And I don't know, I think this BYU team is worse than that Kansas State team was 2 years ago. Yeah. Countering to my points of why I think we can defeat BYU, I do want to really quickly cover my concerns. I'll rattle these off pretty quickly because I think a lot of these are obvious. Will be talked about a lot this week. This is the main one, though. I think BYU's ability to generate turnovers could be an issue. They got two ball hawking defensive backs back there that, even though they might not be the most athletic guys in the world, they're able to force a lot of incompletions. And like I said, generate a lot of turnovers. Can really get in a quarterback's head early. They forced 3 interceptions from Texas Tech last week. Jacob Robinson, Eddie Heckard, they've combined for 7 picks this year. 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery that was returned for a touchdown. 8 pass breakups. So in total, well over a dozen forced incompletions this season. These are guys that are smart defensive backs, and if Maalik Murphy isn't on target, that they can make him pay. And so that's one potential concern for me, that when BYU wins the turnover battle, they're 5-0 this season.
No, it's a valid concern. I think a lot of the concerns going into this game are, can Texas handle their business and execute? It's not anything like I'm super afraid of what the Cougars can do. It's almost like they have some strengths, and if Texas falls short against them, then this game could get a little dicey. But like I said, it's one of those games where if you execute the game plan and you come out ready to play, I don't think you should have too much trouble.
Nothing really.
Holy crap! Diamondbacks are going to the World Series. Wow, I can't believe I'm saying those words. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll finish.
Does the World Series really mean anything if the Diamondbacks are going to it?
It does to me. That's all that matters.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. You guys have been to the World Series plenty. So for this you can shove it.
I like even numbered championships. I want that 28 banner, okay?
Okay. All right. Spoiled, but sure. I know. My last 2 concerns here are, like I said, obvious. Injuries on defense and then inconsistency from the Texas offense with the first-time starter QB. I mean, if Texas gets put behind the sticks, I think BYU is going to try to rush the quarterback a lot early in this one. If they're able to collapse the pocket, Maalik Murphy isn't getting the ball out on time, we're not running the ball effectively, this will be a long game. It'll kind of be a rock fight. And I don't think any Texas fan is going to feel comfortable with the outcome there when you're against a BYU team that is probably wanting that to be the script for this game. And so I think that's a natural transition into score predictions. All right, so Shane, you are in front this year. I did the tally up yesterday. You got 3. Tarik, you have 2, and then I have 2.
Is this against the spread?
Just our margin of victory and score predictions compared to I mean, we can predict the spread too. It just
let's not. I really hate the spread.
It's so yeah. Last week actually, the one we got a new contributor on the site, Brian from the Dallas Star site on Fansided, and he actually predicted us to win 35-17, so he was technically the closest. But for the Hook 'em Horn Show leaderboards, we're still pretty neck and neck this year. But I haven't done my preview for the game yet, so I still need a second to think about my score prediction. I think right now the spread, I believe, is at Texas by 17. And the over-under last time I checked was at 51. So Vegas expecting a pretty low-scoring game, I think, in this one compared to how most games have gone for Texas this year.
24-17 for me.
Shane?
I'm going 30-17, Texas.
37. Okay.
That'll be 7 straight games that Texas scores 30 if Shane's right.
Let's hope. If they can score 30 with Maalik Murphy at quarterback, I think that's a resounding success.
Agreed.
31-20. Yeah. I might end up changing that for the preview, but I'll stick with that for this. Like I said, somewhere in the middle of those two. I think that we will eventually wear them down in the second half and get some more second half scores. I mean, I'm assuming against Houston, we probably would have scored 1 or 2 more times if Ewers had remained healthy at least. Yeah. So,
yeah, fair.
I mean, even with Murphy, his second drive, we scored a touchdown. So I think we'll be able to wear BYU down eventually too. They've not been a great second half defense this season, at least against decent offenses. Yeah. Anyway, Shane, you got anything else you want to add before we get?
No, I think it's going to be one of those games that's not super comfortable to watch because I don't expect the offense to look very crisp. That said, it could be awesome. And like Maalik Murphy could come out and set the world on fire. He could look like he did in the spring game, and there's a chance that we're having a lot of fun. But I think the better chance is that it's a little clunky. It's running the ball a lot. It seems like a lot of Texas games of late have been going like 4 hours long. I don't think that'll be the case here because Texas is going to keep the ball on the ground, and hopefully they can pull away. But I do think it's going to be one of those games where it's within 10 or so going into the fourth, and that you're always a little nervous that one bad throw, one muff punt, and it's a real close game. But at this point, when you're playing with a backup quarterback and you're 6-1, and you don't you quote unquote control your own destiny in regard to the Big 12 championship and even the college football playoff. Like, if you win out, you're sitting pretty. You just need wins. So Texas can leave Saturday with a win over BYU. I think that's a success, no matter how it comes.
True. Yep. And 2 things here for me. Sark's playing his alma mater. I think that he's been looking forward to this game for a little while. One and only game against his alma mater at home is a Big 12 foe. I think that's going to be a special thing for him. Also, it could, potentially we'd be looking at win number 20 for Sark as the Texas head coach this weekend. So some type of milestone there. I feel good that I don't think Sark, if we were Kansas talking, like if we're Kansas in this situation talking about a BYU game and we have Kansas State next week, you could be looking at a situation where your head coach is looking forward a week. For Sark and Texas, had a lot of success against Kansas State the last few years. You get them at home. Again, Sark's alma mater is BYU. I don't feel like we're going to get caught looking forward this weekend, especially with all the quarterbacks. You just really can't. So I feel good about all those reasons. Anyway, for Shane Black, Andrew Miller, Hook'emHeadlines.com. That's pretty much it. Hook 'em.